mga pangarap, saan man umabot.
Good morning and welcome to everyone joining us in our media forum today entitled Powell's Transparency 2.0 Doom, Ayungin Militarization Crashes and Rights, and China's Concessions and Philippines Concerns. We will have 4 speakers today. Our first speaker would be Mr. Ka.Mentong. Really is the President of Asian Century Philippine Strategic Studies. Let us welcome Ka.Mentong for his opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Danny. Magandang umaga po sa lahat sa bayang Pilipinas sa mundo. Ito ay ating ginagawa. Ito po na ito tuwing buwan, simula ng buwan. Dahil po tayo gumagawa ng update at assessment ng mga nangyayari sa bayan natin. Lalo-lalo po for relations at sa relasyon po dito sa mga issues ng South China Sea. Dahil daming mga disinformation, kampanya na tinatawag na transparency strategy ng Amerikano. Well, let's start. In 2023, we saw the range of the transparency strategy, but on December 19, 2024, Bongo Marcos spoke about a paradigm shift. Sabi niya, we have to bring all those ideas together and to change the direction that these incidents have taken us. Yung mga nangyayari sa South China Sea. We have to stop going that way, yung gulo sa South China Sea. We've gone down the wrong road na daw yun. We have to disengage and find ourselves a more peaceful road to go down. Malinaw po, kaya po, I will continue the escalation of the transparency. So a month later, the Ayungin and Scarborough show was quiet, enero and febrero in 2024. But tensions accelerated again. The escalation of the transparency operation by way of the bait and cry, paing at angal. Yan na po ang ginagawa ng ating mga Philippine Coast Guard. Paing ng insidente, kokoban ng media, yung po ang transparency strategy po ni Raymond Powell. Si Raymond Powell, nalagay kung sino si Raymond Powell, pakulit-ulit namin ito pinapakita kasi po ito talaga ang brains behind the gulo sa South China Sea. May nalagay po yan dyan sa screen namin. The bait and cry strategy indicates a coup of the U.S. proxies versus the foreign policy independent school in the Philippine policy community. In the Bongbong administration, ending the 2 months lull in the tensions with China. BBM collapsed again in the face of this pressure. Raymond Powell, can you find it? Hindi ko makita. Mamaya, may nalagay po dyan. But let's... So, yung coalition naman po, we can put attention si Raymond Powell and call attention to this fellow. He's a very important character. American ex-Air Force Colonel nasa likod nitong transparency strategy na sinusunod ni Daniela and company. So, nagsimula na naman ang koalisyon itong Marso. Coalition slide number 1, please. So, the brain behind the transparency operations, ex-Colonel Raymond Powell, in his comments to the U.S. Naval Institute News, claps loudly and said, Manila has the right to expect a more muscular response from its partners and allies. Anong ibig sabihin po nitong sinasabi nitong si Raymond Powell? Elaborate, calling for aggressive a more muscular response. Ibig sabihin niya, ano mas muscular kaysa sa water cannon. We'll explain further. Calling for aggressive NATO-like response, insinuating the definition of armed attack to include water cannons. Nais niya isama sa armed attack na term na nandun sa Mutual Defense Treaty And this is the next slide. As a result of these concerns, as well as incidents over the last week that saw damage to Philippine vessels, Powell told the USNI News that Washington and Manila needs to define what constitutes an attack, as well as how to properly respond to these escalating actions. The Philippines and the US are going to have to start having some very direct conversations about what constitutes an armed attack on a public vessel and make sure they communicate clearly to Beijing how close China is to coming to triggering far more serious consequences. So, anong ibig sabihin niya dito sa sinabi na yung water cannon gusto niya i-define as an armed attack. Hindi na kailangan gawin water cannon lang, but that of course would go against international definition of non-lethal weapons. Okay? But importante na the public understands this. That is what the Americans want, to trigger the Mutual Defense Treaty. Okay, so Manila is okay. Slide 2 nandun na. Colonel Raymond Powell has been pushing for escalation of his transparency strategy in the 2 months long, Enero at Febrero. Medyo tumahimik ang South China Sea. Tinutulak niya yung transparency niya to his cohort erstwhile PCG. Wala. Wala naman. Wala. Erstwhile PCG. Commander J. Tarena, who has apparently been pulled out of the task force by more professional personnel. After its last tactical shift to using civilians in Atinto noong Disyembre 2023, naalala po ninyo yung Atinto, mag-deliver lang ng Christmas gifts mula sa Ayungin, DRT Sierra Madre, wala namang nangyari, anong collapse po yun, or handog Christmas gift distribution to DRT Sierra Madre failed miserably in December 2023. Colonel Powell was in Limbo for 2 months. They even tried ayuda swarming frequently during Filipino fishermen with fuel and food swarms Scarborough Show. Yung increase yan, and then ang susunod slide ko, IFAR. More Filipinos now ship fishing in Scarborough Show dahil nga binigyan nila ng gasolina at pagkain para mag-isna daw sa Scarborough. Another attempt at trying to challenge the Chinese sovereign control of Scarborough Show. The whole of 2023, we saw the failure of the bait and cry, yung pain at angal na strategy, tactics, is now set to resume. Pagsisimula na naman po sa 2024, but China will not budge. Hindi naman gagalaw ang China sa kanyang posisyon. Duterte's policy of dialogue and cooperation saw win-win projects and potential of 64 people joint oil gas exploration. And another year of bait and try, isang taon na naman ng pain at angan is, sabi nga ni Einstein, doing the same thing, expecting a different result, which Einstein called insanity, kapaliwan. China has kept up sovereign control of disputed South China Sea areas with Philippines using professional, lethal, non-lethal means consistent with international soft police practice. Water cannons are used all over the world. Let's go to slide number 5. Kita po natin, Taiwan uses it, Vietnam uses it, iba't ibang mga bansa. Police in the United States use water cannon. Hindi po lethal armed weapon water cannon. The Philippine Navy wants to challenge the China. It can take a few shattered windshield. Wala nang problema siguro kaunting basag na salamin. Otherwise, go back to the Duterte mo. Otherwise, kung ayaw niyo magbasag ng mga windshield ng mga bangka at barko ng Philippine Coast Guard, bumalik na kayo sa Duterte approach to the problem, which is dialogue, cooperation, at marami na pong effective mission ng Pilipinas. The U.S. proxy elements in the Philippine government and media have repeatedly resorted to lies. Yan, kailangan natin expose ito, kaya kailangan natin talakayin ito. Such as denying that there is a Philippine-China agreement on resupply of all humanitarian goods to share among them. Ito po, slide 6. Sinasabi ni Kasmin mismo, salita ni Kasmin kay Ambassador Ma Keqing at that time, Ambassador ng People's Republic of China, in front of the media. Sabi ni Kasmin, they were concerned about the Philippines coming up with structures, yung pagkagayon ng struktura sa aviation, additional structures on the aviation. He said, I told her, sinabi niya kay Ambassador Ma Keqing, that the ship that is moving towards the aviation is only for provisions of food and water for the soldiers who are there. Anong gusto sabihin ni Tatarera? Sinungaling si Kasmin? Yan po, on record, this is not the only newspaper that reported it. Maraming itong mga diyan na nagpulat po niya. This was in 2013. Alam po ninyo, hindi makakalimot ang kasaysayan sa mga totoong mga pangyayari. Pero niloloko nila ang publiko sa kasunod sa paulit-ulit mga kasunod. Ano susunod ko? Tatarera night that there is no Scarborough fishing agreement between China and the Philippines. We quote here the words of President Duterte himself and then Foreign Secretary Alan Peter Cayetano, slide number 7, and then 8 and 8.1. Ito po, sabi ni Cayetano, with this, the current tentative agreement in place becomes essential and the claimants will refuse to yield from the position. Find a common ground for an accord. In other words, sinasabi ni Cayetano, may tentative agreement para sa panahon na hindi pa magkasundo. May common ground para magkasundo. So may agreement. We have a tentative fishing agreement. Sino sinungaling ngayon? Si Cayetano o si Tatarera? Will the mainstream media please report this? Now, meron mga diskusyon talaga dito sa agreement na to. Kasi pumapasok po ang ibang mga issues dito. But let's go to slide number 8. Nandiyan naman. Yan po. No verbal fishing deal between Duterte and C. Sabi ng ng mga kanyang at that time, si 2021, si Harry Roque. Bakit po? Kasi po, pinapressure si Duterte at that time with being pro-China daw. At si Harry Roque, bilang nakapagsalita, sinabi, walang agreement. Kasi nga, sinasabi ni Clark, the Supreme Court Associate Justice Antonio Carlos said the supposed verbal agreement of verbal deal between Duterte and Xi has emboldened the Chinese vessels to stay in the disputed West Philippine Sea. So naging defensive po si Harry Roque at sinasabi niya walang agreement para pang-depensa laban sa mga akusasyon nila Carpio. And yan ay dahil po doon sa panggulo na arbitration award na sa totoo lang walang visa. But this has been a problem. That is why we have to debunk the arbitration. So tuloy natin sa 8.1. So this is the year 2020. Negotiate, ito ay galing sa Vietnam, sa Vietfish ang source, Vietfish magazine. This is a Vietnamese source. Sinasabi po nitong ulat na ito ng Vietnamese, mag-negotiate ng international treaty to replace the agreement on fisheries cooperation in the Tonkin Gulf between Vietnam and China. Merong nangyari ng agreement ang Vietnam at ang China sa Tonkin Gulf. At ito ay tutuloy po dun sa sinasabi ni Cayetano ng permanent agreement na pumasok ng COVID-19. In other words, I'm saying here, Vietnam, kaya kang makipagsundo sa China ng fisheries agreement, tapos dito, kung ano-ano sinasabi laban sa fisheries agreement ng Pilipinas sa China. Tuloy natin. So, we have seen another line of the Italian group. Prior to this agreement lie of Italiana, the before lie of alleged cyanide deliberate destruction by Chinese maritime militia, which the Philippine Coast Guard had to walk back as evidence shows. The Philippines being the top cyanide fishing nation in history. Slide number 9.1. Ito po, from 2003 na report ng World Wildlife Fund. Ganyan katagal na po ito. Wala pa pong kontrobersya yan sa South China Sea. Hindi pa po issue yan. Ano sabi po ng World Wildlife Fund posted in January 29, 2003? Cyanide fishing began in the 1960s in the Philippines to supply the international aquarium trade. But since the early 1980s, a much bigger business has emerged, supplying reef fish for the restaurants of Hong Kong, Singapore, and increasingly mainland China. So, Pilipinas ang sentro ng cyanide fishing para mag-supply nga itong mga merkado ng aquarium fish at sa mga live fish na nakita natin sa aquarium na lumalaki naman tapos dinuluto. So, hindi po China ang gumagawa nito. Mga fishermen po natin. And we have been pursuing this issue for many decades now. Hindi na kinokontrol ng Philippine Coast Guard itong mga pangyayari ito. Hindi makontrol, hindi na makontrol. Okay, so we have exposed another line by Bureau Fisheries and Aquarium Resource, Aquatic Resources during this time. And then this latest, next slide. Kasinungalingan ng mga politiko po natin about the Vietnam rights violation daw ng Chinese research ship. Ito po, ang politiko na si Franz Castro ng kaliwa, ng party list teachers. While Chinese maritime intrusions are often observed in the disputed South China Sea, the presence of Chinese vessels in the eastern part of the Philippines is a clear violation of the rights of Vietnam rights. Mabuti naman may mga professional po sa ating Philippine Navy. At sabi niya, yung dalawang barko, yung DCBO Chicago at sa isa, did not need to ask permission from the Philippine government when they pass through Philippine rights, the NAM right. They only pass through our EEZ. There is no violation. But marinig po itong kasinungalingan po ni Franz Castro, kay Larissa Hontiveros, kay Senator Tolentino, and so ang daming mga kasinungalingan. 5 minutes more to go. ASEAN is polite, ASEAN. Lagi nilang sinasabi, ang mundo sumusuporta sa Pilipinas. Bakit ang ASEAN hindi sumusuporta sa Pilipinas? Ito po, ASEAN's polite silence on the matter is broken by Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim's comments to Australian media. Quote, decrying, quote, China-phobia among U.S. and Western allies, obliging alluding to the Philippines among the U.S. non-Western allies. So, he lately added in Australia, attempts to contain China's rise would only aggravate the country and sow discord in the region. Yan po ang boss na actually ng ASEAN. Hindi nila tinutukoy ang Pilipinas na nagpapayloy po ng centrality ng ASEAN dito sa mga issues ito. Pero may pahiwatig naman nila po si Anwar Ibrahim. Si Bongbong Marcos naman laging in defensive ng mga interviews. The Philippines acts for its own interest. It is not a policy that has been foisted upon us by any country about the American impositions. So maraming nagdududa sa mga pinagsasabi ni Bongbong. Slide 13, sunod-sunod ko na, 13.01, 13.1. Sa nagmamagpapang po si Bongbong Marcos, pero wala naman sa mundo naniniwala. Philippines again in the front line sa tulad ng World War II, I think Ka.Mentong will elaborate on that. Susunod is what? Headline. But anong totoo sa Australia? Ang Australia po nakikipag-arreglo sa China at lumalapit sa China dahil po, ayan po, bisita si Prime Minister Albanese noong November 2022, yung buong taon ng 2023, inaayos nila ang problema at para maibalik po ang mga exports nila sa China. Ito na susunod na slide. Australian lobsters and wine to China likely to resume. This is November 22, 2023, as relations warm up. So, ang Australia nakikipag-arreglo, nagmamatapang ang pipitsuging. I will have to say, Pilipinas, pipitsugin po tayo. Hindi natin mapakain ng ating mga mahihirap ng murang bigas. Magmamatapang nalalaman sa China na superpower po na kahit ang Estados Unidos ay takot. I think we really have to stop all this charade ng Pilipinas tungkol tungkol dito dahil sa utos ng Amerikano. BBM was insulted by Australian journalist Sarah Ferguson about the Marcos plunder. And sabi ni Sarah Ferguson, you can put in the slide, may I ask you why that's funny? At nautal si Bongbong Marcos kasi nga nagpo-posisyon si Bongbong Marcos na matapang. Iniinsulto na lang ng mga foreign people. So, it's sleepless in Malacanang na hindi daw makatulog si Bongbong Marcos. Ayon dito sa column ni Iris Gonzalez ng Philippine Star. And the Philippine Embassy in Washington, si Benjo Modes, hindi din makatulog dahil tinatawagan siya sa madaling araw ng Bongbong Marcos. As the anxiety of China's possible response to the escalation of the transparency strategy and the trade repercussions that may ensue. Iris Gonzalez, slide 14, 14.1, 14.2, and so on. So, para mabigyan ng kumpiyansa si Bongbong, sabi ni Benjo Modes, ambassador ng Pilipinas sa China, meron 1.7 trillion pesos na i-invest ng Amerika. Examinin natin ang record ng Amerika. Tingnan natin ang next slide. Yung pinangako ni Biden noong 2022 na Build Back Better World, na kasama po ang mundo, ang tapat po sa Belt and Road Initiative ng China, is dead. Galing sa Forbes Advisor, American Magazine. Walang pera ang Amerika sa lahat ng mga pinapangako. Ang susunod na pagtapat ng Amerika at India sa China, yung India-Middle East Corridor. Ano po nangyari? The uncertain future of the India-Middle East Middle East Europe Corridor. Wala akong nangyayari sa lahat ng mga pangako ng Amerikano. Susunod na slide. Ang Japan, aasahan daw, Japan's economy unexpectedly slips into recession, hurt by weak domestic demand. Pabagsak po ang Japanese economy. Anong susunod na slide? Kaya sabi po itong si ating Foreign Minister, Foreign Secretary, Philippines preparing for possible economic fallout with China amid sea dispute. Nangangamba na si Secretary Manalo na ang susunod na mangyayari baka tigilan na ang import ng China ng bananas, ang galing sa Davao po si Peter Tirovinia, avocado bang sa durian, naka 1 bilyong export first time in the history. Baka yun mawala na kaagad. Pineapple, and so on and so forth. Yan po ang tinataya po nitong mga adventuristang Carrera and Company sa utos po ng Amerikano si Raymond Powell. Yung ating ekonomiya. Anong susunod na slide? But ano totoong pakiramdam ni Manalo tungkol sa Amerika? Sabi niyo, but Manalo acknowledge there were at least a small question mark over support from the Philippines. Most important security partner of the United States. Asked about the November election, which will pit incumbent Joe Biden against Republican Donald Trump, he said it was a topic of frequent debate behind closed doors. Manalo afraid U.S. will abandon the Philippines or some demographic error, like the way the U.S. abandoned Vietnam, Afghanistan, Ukraine, and so on. Yan po ang alay ng Pilipinas. Ang Amerika na iniiwan lahat ng mga alay niya. Okay. So, sleepless daw. It's sleepless in Malacanang, Philippine Embassy in Washington. As an anxiety of China's possible response to the escalation to the transparency strategy and trade repercussions may ensue. But Duterte was never sleepless. Si Duterte, hindi naman nagkukulang ng tulog ng panahon niya. There was, kasi nga, maayos ang relasyon sa China. There is no reward for being a proxy and vassal state. Ukraine's tragic fate today is a lesson for the would-be Ukraine 2.0, also known as the Philippines. While the Philippines is allying with Quad and AUKUS, it is isolating from ASEAN and center of the region's community. Nothing could be more than in slide 15. China 2023 GDP growth forecast revised up to 5.2% according to IMF. You know, China is getting stronger, and slide 15.1 will BBM ni Zelensky, kasi si Zelensky po, well, again, ASEAN po, no? Si Jokowi ng Indonesia said, the big powers should not sharpen rivalries in ASEAN Summit. Pero yun naman ang ginagawa ni Bongbong Marcos sa mga speeches niya. Susunod po, what is happening to Zelensky? Naghahanda na po ng escape route ang Amerikano para kay Zelensky. Dahil malapit na po mag-collapse ang Kiev mismo. Hindi masyadong nauulat po ito. But Asia Times is a international magazine na unang nag-report na hinihanda na escape. Si Bongbong Marcos kaya, 2-3 years down the road, kailangan mag-escapolin sa Pilipinas. Okay. Duterte's time is a paradigm of win-win relation with China as Cayetano explains today. Sabi ni Cayetano, kailangan ibalansin natin yung handling of the West Philippine Sea and the economic issues. Economic cooperation boosted the Philippines when crisis came. China quickly aided the country. Slide 17. Kaliwat Dam, Chico River Irrigation, Estrella Cantanin Bridge, Intermunos Binondo Bridge, Davao Bridge, Davao, we have a new bridge being constructed, and so on and so forth. Ang daming proyekto. Anong nabigay ng Amerika the past 2 years dito sa kay Bongbong? Military bases. Ano? It's simple for Bongbong Marcos to get back his sleep, makatulog siya ulit, drop the US in Philippines and return to the fold of Asia, ASEAN and China's community. Transparency 2.0 strategy has not seen a single benefit for the real problems of the nation. Hunger and hardship is expressed in frustration over rise, electricity, fuel inflation. Transparency 2.0 addresses none of these pressing matters of the people, but the BBM government and security officials are all focused on an ex-US Air Force Colonel beating the drum of Transparency 2.0. Balik natin si Donald Powers escape na Diyoso in Japan. Meanwhile, ito ang ending ko po. The business of profits for the ruling class moves on. Slide 18. Tingnan natin po yung next slide. Sino po yung nasa gitna? Ano pong incident na to? Memorandum of Understanding signing of EI Corporation and ZL China ito, Machinery Philippines. Present at the MOU signing from left is Zheng Hidwaan. Ano yung nasa gitna? Jesus Martin Cacho Araneta, pamangkin po ni Lisa Araneta. Kapatid pa lang. President ZL, siya po ang Assistant President and General Manager of First Moving Machinery Business. Jesus Martin Cacho Araneta, President ZL Machinery Philippines. Anyway, so walang tigil ang negosyo ng pamilya ni Lisa Araneta with the Chinese. And the big media and politicians, Congress scholars, and penny argent there is cheap on the US of A funds for its information or disinformation. Its funds for its information or disinformation. Slide number 18.1. US Congress proposes 500 million for negative news coverage of China. Yan po ay kumakalat po kanina na papag-usapan namin ng headquarters ng Amerikano sa kabilang propaganda campaign po sa Pilipinas. Nandiyan sa Makati, maybe in our next report we will identify kung saan lugar at doon po pupunta lahat ng mga kailangan ng counting programs po sa kumuha sa mga Amerikano. So my last sentence is pity the Filipino nation. Okay. With that, I'll turn over now to Dagi ulit, and we can have the report on the 2 sessions in China from our Davao colleague, Peter Kimalina. Peter first.
Thank you. Thank you, Ka.Mentong, for your presentation on the recent developments in our foreign policy. Our next speaker is Mr. Peter Tilavinia, the Director of APCO, the Association for Philippines-China Understanding. Let us welcome Mr. Lavinia for his opening remarks.
Magandang umaga po sa ating lahat. Maraming salamat, Dani. Ang pag-uusapan ko ay tungkol sa nagaganap na tinatawag nilang 2 sessions sa China. Ito ho ang sessions ng China People's Political Consultative Conference at ang National People's Congress. Ano po itong mga ito? Every year ho, nagkakaroon ito ng pagpupulong itong dalawang malalaking body sa China. Ang National People's Congress ay ang kanilang kongreso o parliament. Ang People's Consultative Conference naman ay advisory body. Ito ho yung mga naglalatag na mga plano sa China. Ito ho ay pwede mahintulad natin sa ating policy making body, ang Kongreso, no? Pero wala ho tayo ng tinatawag na consultative conference. Sa China kasi, masasabi kong talagang tunay na demokrasya ang gawin nila dahil imagine niyo 1.4 billion no, na Chinese. Tapos parang inverted pyramid kung i-imagine natin. Sinasala talaga nila ang mga tao at ang mga ideya, no? Para anong mas maganda sa China. So galing yan sa 1.4 billion people. Meron niyang villages, parang barangay sa atin. May mga representative sila, hanggang munisipyo, probinsya, region, hanggang dumarating dito sa National Congress nila. 3,000 ho ang membro niyan. At dyan naman sa 3,000, pinipili nila yung kanilang tinatawag na standing committee na more than 100 yan. At ito yung nagpipili na naman parang executive committee na parang 1 dosena hanggang pipili ng presidente. Yung isa na lang. No? Imagine nyo, from 1.4 billion na pipili nila hanggang isa. No? So salang-sala nila. Sino ang pinakamagaling sa China? Sino ang may mga magagandang ideya? Ito na ho yung nag-meeting ngayon. Yung tinatawag nila National People's Congress. At dito, nilalatag nila ang mga programa. For example, nilabas na nila na ang kanilang growth target for the next year is another 5% GDP growth. No? At kinukontrol nila kanilang inflation to only 3%. No? Tapos, mag-create sila ng additional 12 million jobs. So, ito yung mga tinatakda nilang targets sa pagpaplano. Pero ito kanilang pagpaplano, halos continuing process ng pag-aaral, ng konsultasyon, hanggang sa nabubuo nila kanilang programa. Yan ang kaibahan sa atin. Kasi sa atin, ang ating mga politiko, kung ano lang ang flavor of the month, sino gustong sumikat, blah blah blah. Pero tingnan nyo ang mga problema ng taong bayan, hindi na-address. Dahil wala tayong continuing process of paghihimay-himay at pag-aaral ng anong mga problema ng bansa, ng ating taong bayan, at ano ang ating dapat gawin. Yan ang kaibahan. So kaya itong tinatawag na 2 sessions in China, hindi lang mahalaga sa bansa nila, pati sa buong mundo. Bakit? China ngayon ay pinakamalaki na sa manufacturing, sa industries, sa technology. No? Sa Pilipinas, siya ang ating number 1 trading partner. So, kaya kung ano man ang nangyayari sa China, ano ang plano nila, merong effect, no? Or mag-i-impact sa atin kung ano man ang mga plano nila. Kaya mahalaga na maintindihan ito ng ating taong bayan na kung ano ito tinatawag na 2 sessions in China. Sa pamamagitan din itong kanilang 2 sessions, dahil nila pinipili ang kanilang mga leaders. No? Ito rin, pwede natin i-compare sa anong nangyayari sa ibang mga tinatawag na demokrasya raw. For example, nakita natin ngayon sa Estados Unidos na nagyayabang sila ang cradle o sila ang sentro ng democracy. Noong nakaraang araw lang, nagkaroon ng Super Tuesday primary, tinatawag nila sa US. Pagpipili kung sino maglalaban-laban sa darating na halalan nila sa November. Pero tingnan niyo naman yung mga kandidato. Halos walang quality. No? Halos magkapareha lang ng mga posisyon at mga ideya. Magkabilang partido lang. Naalala ko tuloy yung sinabi ni Fidel Castro na actually ang Amerika, wala namang two-party system yan. It's a one-party system sa Amerika, controlled by the Zionist lobby. Kaya lang, mayroong dalawang wing. Sabi nila, yung Democratic wing at Republican wing. Pero may kinatiba ba yung dalawa? Halos wala. Pero kikita natin, yung tinatawag na demokrasya sa Amerika ay pagpipili ng mga sinong magiging leader nila para i-promote ang interest ng iilan. Di ba? I-compare natin ngayon sa China, itong gagawa ng 2 sessions at pagpipili nila kung sino ang mga karapat-dapat na leaders nila na mag-i-implement nitong mga programa ito. Baliktad na sistema, di ba? Pinag-uusapan muna ano ang ating solusyon, saka tayo maghahanap sino ang tamang leader na mag-i-implement itong solusyon. So iba talaga ang demokrasya sa China, tinatawag nilang people's democracy, no? Na talagang nasusunod kung ano ang gusto ng mga mamamayan. Kaya hindi nakakapagtaka sa mga survey-survey, kahit ginagawa ito ng mga Western countries, ang taas ng approval rating ng sistema nila at mga leaders nila. Ikumpara naman natin, for example, sa Amerika ngayon, kung titignan po ang approval rating ni President Biden, mababa pa sa 30%. No? Sa China, umaabot ng 80+% ang approval rating ng kanilang mga leaders. No? Kaya yung mahalaga na dapat maintindihan din natin ano itong nangyayari sa China sa paglulunsad din na itong tinatawag na 2 sessions. Sana na yan din ang mangyari sa bansa natin na magkaroon talaga ng tunay na representation ang ating mga mamamayan. Dahil dito makikita natin yung 3,000 na yan, alam nyo ilang percent ang galing sa IPs, mga indigenous peoples? 17%. No? Ilan ang mga manggagawa at mga peasant? Ganun din. Ilan ang mga katulad nating mga middle class professionals? More than 20%. No? So makita mo ang kanilang kongreso, kanilang representative of the people. No? Kung ikumpara natin yan sa ating kongreso ngayon, sabi nila, majority niyan, contractor. Pwede naman contractor, yung congressman, naging contractor na rin. So practically, 99% ng representative natin sa ating kongreso represents the elite. No, kung ikumpara natin sa China, no, ordinary people are in their parliament. Dito sa kanila tinatawag na National People's Congress. So, sana maintindihan ng ating mga kababayang Pilipino na ang sistema sa China ay hindi pwedeng ikumpara sa sistema sa Western countries na tinatawag na democracy. Na ginaya natin, kinopya lang natin yung constitution at political system ng Estados Unidos. Sana magkaroon pa tayo ng pagkaaral na ano ba talaga ang mas better system sa Pilipinas na pwede natin matawag na representative democracy. Yan po, maraming salamat, Dani.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you, Mr. Peter Dulavinia, for enlightening us on China's 2 sessions, which demonstrate their people's democracy. Thank you for your remarks. Next, I'd like to welcome Ka.Mentong. He's the Vice President for Asian Central Philippine Strategic Studies and for Internal Affairs. Let us welcome Ka.Mentong for his opening remarks.
Yan po ang dahilan kung bakit mabilis ang progreso sa China. Sa China po, ina-identify muna nila ang problema. Saka sila naghahanap ng solusyon. Sa Pilipinas po, naghahanap sila ng solusyon. At pagkatapos, gumagawa sila ng problema. Yan po ang sumasyon ng presentation ni Mr. Lavinia. The Filipino has a problem for every solution. Ayan. Katulad po ngayon, ang title po ng aking presentation ay simple lamang naghahayag ng suma kung ano mga nangyari recently. At ang title po nito ay Marcos Takes Philippines to the Brink of War. Maaari po hindi alam ng karamihan. Ito po ay nagsimula last year. February pa po sa pagtatayo ng 4 additional sites sa EDCA, Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement with the U.S. At ngayon, mukhang hindi na makatulog si Presidente Marcos dahil hanggang ngayon ay ang kapalit ng 4 na base ay wala pang dumarating. At sinisingil na niya ang kanyang tiyo, si Babes Romualdez. Kaya pareho na silang hindi makatulog. Yung isa, sleepless in Washington, D.C. Yung isa, sleepless overlooking Pasig River. Kaya, yan o ang katotohanan. At habang piniprepara tayo sa ayaw natin o sa gusto, para sa sigalot, sa gulo, at sa gera, our government speaks with many voices. Ang ganda po ng timing. Dahil ka-announce lang kahapon ni Danilo that China will soon unveil its 4th aircraft carrier. Ayan po mga kakunsa. 4 na. Ang Amerika, 7 ang major aircraft carrier nila. Kaya na 7th fleet. No? At bawat isang aircraft carrier ay nagbabantay sa buong mundo na may mga kasama, mga bodyguard ng mga destroyers, frigates, and whatever, submarines. Ito po nakaraan sa araw ay dumaraw ang ating Pangulo sa Australia. At siya ay pumirma ng 3 agreements. Una, sa maritime domain and maritime environment. Pangalawa, sa cyber and critical technology. At pangatlo, sa effective competition laws and policies. Yung po muna, sa ngayon sa palasyo, ay naghahangad na i-strengthen ang civil-military cooperation, enhance defense deals, and promote international law and rule-based, no? Markahan nyo, rule-based international order. Kaya ito ay agad-agad na pinatikos ng China. At tinawag ng China ang maritime agreement na insensitive at destabilizing. Marcos' insensitivity signing a pact with Australia ignored the trade war between China and Australia that is yet to heal. Kaya nga po yung bago nilang Prime Minister ay nagpunta noong November sa Beijing. Ito po si Albanese para initoke ang economic relationship between China and Australia. Worse, hindi kinonsider ni Marcos ng Australia, other than the bilateral agreements and military commitments like the one in the Philippines, is also part ng siyam na strategic alliances. Nagsisimula sa 5 eyes, 5 mata. Papuntang AUKUS, papuntang Quad. Lahat ay hindi kasama ang China. Under the terms of AUKUS, for instance, security alliance with the US and the United Kingdom, Australia will receive conventionally armed nuclear-powered submarines that will help its Navy counter Chinese nuclear-powered vessels in the region. Kaya sa pagsasalita ng Deputy Director ng China's Foreign Ministry na si Mao Ning, sabi niya, the South China Sea is generally stable. Relevant countries' maritime security cooperation should not undermine other countries' interests or disrupt regional peace and stability. So ano ang ginawa ng ating Pangulo sa Canberra? Addressing the Australian Parliament, sinuot niya ang kanyang white Anglo-Saxon na sombrero as he slipped into a controversial part of history. Quote, as in 1942, the Philippines now finds itself on the front line against actions that undermine regional peace, erode regional stability, and threaten regional success. Halos pareho sila ng obserbasyon ni Mao Ning. Pero, iba ang interpretasyon. Kaya siya ay agad na pinuna ni Ambassador Rigoberto Tiglao sa kanyang column sa Manila Times na mukhang isang speech na rinaf sa US Embassy dito sa Maynila. O di kaya ay doon sa sikretong opisina nila sa Makati ng US Agency for Global Media Affairs na may budget na kalahating bilyong dolyares. Ang sabi ni Tiglao, that statement is so grossly inaccurate. Hindi po ang Pilipinas ang nasa frontline ng World War II Pacific Theater. Nakalimutan yata na ating Pangulo na 1942 itong kanyang binabanggit. Nagkaroon lamang tayo ng independensya noong 1946. Kundi ang mga Amerikano dahil tayo ay isang colony, na nagkukontrol ng ating foreign relations noong panahon na yun. Kaya po tinakit ng mga Hapon dito sa Pilipinas ay hindi ang mga Pilipino kung hindi ang mga base militar ng Amerika. The American leadership even ordered, sabi ni Tiglao, their colony to be abandoned. Natatandaan niyo? Nagsisimula pa lang ng gera, sumakay na si Douglas MacArthur sa isang submarino. Kasama si Quezon. At siyempre, para hindi mawala sa poder si Quezon, sinama niya yung Vice President niya, sinusbain niya. And of course, kasama dyan si Carlos P. Romulo at yung kanilang stenographer na si Raul Manglapos. Sumakay sila sa isang submarino at nagpunta sila sa Australia. Tumakas si MacArthur at iniwan kay Wainwright, General Wainwright, ang pagsuko ng Pilipinas. Isinuko 100,000 USAFE, mostly 90% of which were Filipinos. Isinuko tayo. Ilan ang Hapon na lumusog under Masauro Homa? 45,000 lamang. Isinuko tayo ng Amerika sa kakalahating pwersa ng mga Hapon na karamihan ay nakabisikleta pa mula Lingayen, Pangasinan, pababa ng Maynila. Ganyan po ang mga Amerikano. Sila ang unang nawawala pagka wala na silang makatas sa sitwasyon. Abandon. So that they could fortify Australia. At ano nangyari? Para hindi makarating ang gera sa Australia. Naging buffer tayo, preno, handbrake. Hinarap natin ang mga Hapon. Ginulo natin ang mga Hapon. Para hindi sila agad-agad makapunta hanggang Australia. Australia that is mostly populated by English descendants. If ever we were in the front line, sabi ni Bumi Tiglao, as Marcos claimed, it was upon the orders of our U.S. overlords who put Filipinos on the front lines of the Japanese War. So ano itong ginagawa? Ano itong ginawa ni Marcos sa Canberra, Australia? He was actually running errands for Uncle Sam. Sa analysis ni Cheng Hong, Director ng Australian Studies Center sa East China Normal University, Marcos has turned the Australian Parliament into a platform to stir up regional tensions para mang-intriga and to incite Australian people and politicians against China. At sabi niya, manisyoso ito. Isa pang profesor ng China Foreign Affairs University, si Li Haidong, sabi nga Marcos is actually cooperating with the U.S. to promote Washington's creation of a small NATO, North Atlantic Treaty Organization in the Asia Pacific. Experts believe that the Philippines and Australia's pursuit of strengthening military cooperation may have negative effects for regional security and stability. The regional arms race may intensify, and the existing economic integration process in the Asia Pacific will be impacted. Australia is always under the pressure from the US. In addition, Australia's opposition leader, Peter Dutton, has been criticizing the Albanese government for being soft on China as Australia prepares to usher the next federal parliamentary election in 2025. So yung pong visit ni Marcos ay to reinforce the opposition, si Peter Dutton, no, against Albanese. In this case, the Australian government tried to use the Philippines to hype up China's related topics and attempted to show a tougher attitude towards China. However, ito pong si Prime Minister Albanese is seemingly more of a response to the U.S. strategy on the surface, such as giving Marcos a high-level reception and signing agreements, but actually it is a cautious attitude in substance and specific actions, because relations between China, sabi nga kanina ni Ka.Mentong, and Australia have deteriorated under the previous Prime Minister, Scott Morrison. At mula mag-take over si Albanese, bilateral relations have improved and achieved basic stability, a situation that was hard-won. Nagsisimula pa lang mag-recover, mga kabansa. Australians are well aware that no good will come of Australia becoming a tool of the Philippines to confront China. According to data from the Australian government, China is Australia's biggest two-way trading partner, accounting for 26% of Canberra's goods and services with the world. At yung two-way trade increased by 12% in 2022 to 23, totaling $317 billion. Eto na. The South China Morning Post said that Australia has invited Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi for a 2-day visit in the second half of March. Ano yung sabihin? Para maghilom kung anumang damage ang na-create itong Marcos visit, pupunta doon sa China itong si Wang Yi pag-alis ni Marcos para retokehin kung ano man ang gulong ginawa ni Marcos. China is resolute in defending its territorial sovereignty, noting that if Australia chooses confrontation against China with the Philippines, Beijing-Canberra ties which have managed to recover ay babagsak ulit, with future disputes being more difficult to properly resolve. Alam mo ba ninyo na ang umaapaw na ngayon sa Australia, ang produkto nilang wine, dahil wala silang mapagbultunan. Pero ang balita, magsisimula na raw mag-ship uli sa China. In the midst of all this, ano nangyari? Bukang walang inaasahan si Bongbong, sleepless na naman, tinawagan ang kanyang tiyo, at ang kanyang tiyo naman ay nagsabi na meron daw 1.7 trillion pesos U.S. investment to Manila that will counter any economic coercion from China. Alam nyo, bulag sila, magtiyo na sila, nagbubulahan pa sila. The Chinese embassy, of course, told Romualdez to stop spreading erroneous China threat and xenophobia. And stop this smear campaign. China threat. Anong threat sa China? Sino ba ang nag-organize? Sino ba ang naghahanap ng barkada? China ba naghahanap ng barkada laban sa Pilipinas? O Pilipinas naghahanap ng barkada sa Amerika, sa Japan, sa South Korea, sa Australia? Palagay ko susunod, India na maghahanap. Who weaponizes economic power and gets addicted to sanctions? Di ba US? So sabi ng Chinese Embassy kay Romualdez is stop this and do more for the benefit of your own people and this country's relations with China. Mapasukan pa ng demonstration sa human rights, mapasukan pa ng soft lock na interview with Sara Ferguson. Na-iskandalo tayo. Na-iskandalo naman tayo sa Canberra. Kaya sino sumisikat ngayon sa Australia? Malaysia's Prime Minister advocated against taking sides in US-led Western rivalries against China. And rejected criticism that Malaysia is too accommodating of China. Anwar Ibrahim steals the show as he frowns upon attempts to deny China its legitimate place in history, saying that Western perspectives of the future of global order should not be expected to be embraced universally, warning that without ASEAN's intervention, the region would be principally dictated by calculations and designs of major powers. But he was constructive. He said, I believe that Malaysia and Australia have a duty to try to encourage the US and China and other major players, referring to you, in the Asia-Pacific, to conduct themselves in a manner that is conducive to enhancement of regional cooperation and economic integration. At the same time, in outlining significant societal and political shifts in the U.S. over the past 3 decades, the last 30 years, tulad ng globalization, na nagdulot ng benefit sa Asian working class and reduced American industrial base. Naging transactional daw ang US, using rewards and punishment to achieve aims with other countries. Naapektuhan din daw ng mga gera sa Iraq at Afghanistan ang kamalayan ng Amerikano. That is why Washington concession is gradually eroding, if not totally disappearing. So ano itong sinasabi ni Bongbong Marcos sa Melbourne? That the Philippines is not at the beck and call of the Americans. I always wanted to make it clear, sabi niya, because there is a narrative out there that is going around that we are at the beck and call practically of the United States when it comes to foreign policy decisions, especially surrounding the South China Sea. Decisions that we make because we believe. Kayo na magsabi kung totoo ito sinasabi mo. And are convinced and know that it is in our national interest. Eh, tingnan mo yung survey ng December. Sa 7 puntos, ang priority na sinasabi ng taong bayan sa survey, economic ang problema. Itong inflation ang problema. Pero ano inuuna ni Marcos? Defending the integrity of the Filipino territory against foreigners. 6% lamang. Yan ba ang sinasabi ng national interest? Well, this is how he is isolating himself. Diyan siya nagtatago sa isyu na yan habang ang buong bansa ay sukan-suka na sa nangyayari sa ating ekonomiya. At habang siya nasa Melbourne, nagkagulo sa South China Sea, siya isang may supply mission. Anong sabi natin, Pangulo? We continue to view with great alarm discontinuing dangerous maneuvers and dangerous action. And this time they damaged a cargo ship and caused injury to some of our seamen, and I think we cannot do this in any way but in a more serious way. Mga kabansa, meron tinatawag na international regulation for the prevention of collisions at sea. Ayan mga kabansa, ang initial position ng mga barko. Ito ay hindi galing sa China na picture, ito ay galing sa Philippine Coast Guard. Sino nauunang barko? China. Ayun. Sino nasa kaliwa ng barko na nahuhuli? Philippines, nasa port side. So makatuwid, kung nandito yung Philippine ship, nasa starboard side niya, kung nandito yung Philippine ship, nasa kanan niya, yung Chinese Coast Guard. Diba? Nasa starboard niya. Ano ang sabi ng call rates? When two power-driven vessels are crossing so as to involve risk of collision, the vessel which has the other on her starboard side or right side, ito, shall keep out of the way and shall, if circumstances of the case admit, avoid crossing ahead of the other vessel. So kung titignan nyo sa video nito, ito yung starting position, pero sino nauna doon? Yung Philippine ship. So sino ang guilty ng dangerous maneuvers and dangerous action? Alam mo, ito isang problema na dinidiscuss ko with 3 former PCG commandants. Na mga PCG, bobo when it comes to piloting the vessels. And it reflects the basic right-of-way mentality of the Filipino. Ano? Sa traffic, ang may right-of-way sa Filipino. Dahil, kung sino ang mauna sa gitna, siya ang may right-of-way. O, di pagdating ka mo na muna sa gitna, pero, ang ginawa ko rin ito, siya na tumigil, hindi lang siya nagpreno, umaatras pa siya para to give way kasi nakita niya, disidido. Disidido. Buti na rin hindi lumubog. Next slide. Ayan mga kabansa. Pangatlo. Sabi niya, ano sabi niya? This is not the right time for the Philippines to invoke the Mutual Defense Treaty. Eh bakit mo binabanggit? If it's not the right time, why are you mentioning it? Ha? mga right timing. So, Joshua, meron ka ba nito tape itong mga iksinasin na ito? Anong provision ng Mutual Defense Treaty? Kaya nilalakad na ho ni Powell ngayon na ang water cannon ang maging arm attack. Bakit? To invoke the Mutual Defense Treaty, an arm attack is necessary. Pagka walang arm attack, hindi pwede. So, binabaliktad na nila ang definition ng arm attack. Gusto na nilang i-include ang water cannon at i-include sa kanilang rule-based order. So, ayan mga kabansa, hindi pwede yan eh. Dahil ang water cannon blockades are non-lethal weapons. Glaring lasers, non-lethal weapons. Acoustic and sonars are non-lethal weapons. Ano ibig sabihin? Lethal, non-lethal. Hindi nakakamatay. Eh siguro kung lunok mo lang lahat yung binugan ng water cannon, siguro yung patso ka, patay ka. Besides, hindi ito nangyayari sa metropolitan area of the Philippines or on any territorial seas claimed by China in the Pacific. At kung ito ang totoo, kung siya'y tunay na anak nito, ito ang sabi ng totoong Marcos. Pakinggan natin ang sinabi ng totoong Marcos.
The United States is not necessarily bound to immediately react because the provision of the Mutual Defense Pact is that you will immediately take steps as is necessary to meet the contingency in accordance with your constitutional processes. What does that mean? That means that you go to the Senate and the House of Representatives. What does that mean? That means delay while we are dying there. The United States is not necessarily bound to immediately react because the provision of the Mutual Defense Pact is that you will immediately take steps as is necessary to meet the contingency in accordance with your constitutional processes. What does that mean? That means that you go to the Senate and the House of Representatives. What does that mean? That means delay while we are dying there.
Ayan ba, kabansa? Habang namamatay na tayo rito, nagdidebate pa sila sa Washington, D.C. kung ano ang gagawin. Ano nangyari sa Ukraine? Isang taon silang nagdidebate. Hiningi ng Ukraine more than $100 billion. Finally, darating na, pero 60 billion lamang. Dahil yung 30, pupunta yata sa Israel at yung 10, pupunta sa Taiwan. Walang nabanggit tungkol sa pupunta sa 4 sites na Amerika. Hindi tayo nasama. Ang pang-apat na kopa ni Marcos ay ito naman nangyari sa Benham Rice. Ang sabi niya, the presence of Chinese research vessels in the Benham Rice was a clear intrusion into the Philippine maritime territory. Ay mabuti na lang may mga honest na Philippine Navy professionals. Ano sabi? Napansin nyo ba hindi na si Tariela? Hindi na yung pangit ang lumalabas ngayon. Medyo puging na ito. And Governor Trinidad said, there is no violation made. The passage of the Chinese vessels was still permissible. They have freedom of navigation when it comes to the EEZ, Exclusive Economic Zone of coastal states, so they can pass. Bakit po? against sa kanilang ikinakalat na chismis. Sa EEZ po, hindi walang karapatan ang coastal state sa ibabaw ng tubig. The ibabaw ng tubig remains to be international waters. And earlier, the Philippine Navy spokesman clarified that the presence of the Chinese maritime militia does not automatically mean illegal action or harassment. Presence is different from illegal action. Alam ninyo mga kabansa, marami pang pwedeng pagkwentuhan, pero I will go to the closing of my presentation. Ano ba talaga ang problema natin? Alam niyo, former ambassador to the Philippines, Fu Yin, and very high official now in the foreign affairs ng China, si Fu Yin, sa kanyang libro, Seeing the World, number 2, sa first article ng chapter 5, entitled Peace Issues in Asia, ito, Huang Yang Dao, or Scarborough Shoal, what actually happened in 2012. Ito ang kanyang obserbasyon after all the narration. Pwede pa raw marinedyohan. However, the Philippine government was not of one voice. The Philippine Foreign Secretary soon started to spin the story. He claimed that China had persuaded the U.S. to put pressure on the Philippines to withdraw, and it had now occupied the Scarborough Shoal. Clearly, sabi niya, sumalangit nawa ang kanyang kaluluwa. Rosario was trying to create controversy and to challenge the right of the Chinese surveillance ships to remain in the area to watch over Scarborough Shoal. As we later discovered, he was already preparing to bring the matter to international arbitration. The Rosario's key working assumption was that the Philippines had been in rightful possession of Scarborough Shoal, which was now lost to China. In fact, the Philippines started to fabricate new evidence to support its sovereignty claims over Scarborough Shoal. Ano ang problema? Tayo mismo, from the President down to Taliela, cannot agree. The National Defense cannot agree with the Foreign Affairs. The Philippine Navy does not agree with the Coast Guard. Nanggugulo pa yun, Jonathan, na hindi naman malaya sa National Security Council. Na abogado pero hindi nagbabasa ng batas. Iba-ibang definition nila ng sovereignty rights. Ibang definition nila ng territory sa jurisdiction. Ibang definition nila sa territorial land versus territorial sea. At ngayon may bago pang term na binabanggit si Marcos. Maritime territory according to UNCLOS. Tapos gusto pa nilang palitan at gawing arm attack ang water cannon, glaring lasers, acoustics, and sonars. Samantalang simple lamang mga kabansa. Ang hinihingi ng China. Tayo dalawa usap. Wala kengkoy, gulo. Tayo dalawa. Yung usap natin dalawa, batas, Sa'yo, baka sa akin. Negosyo na tayo. Yun na hinihingi. The only way we can prove our sovereignty rights, our EEZ, can protrude the claimed sovereignty of China is if China, who is the sovereign and the owner, allows us, welcomes us into its territory through the bilateral negotiation sa pag-uusap. Hindi ba yan nag-uusap si Duterte at si Xi Jinping? Kinabukasan, bukas sa mga fishermen natin ang karagatan. Noong 2018 to 2019, 3 milyong turista na Chino ang dumating sa Pilipinas. Last year, wala pang 300,000. Ano nangyari sa ating kalakal? Sus, Mariosep overnight. Our biggest export now is 1.3 billion US dollars just on nickel ore. And all China is willing to buy all the fruits that we can produce. Negosyo. Sabi ng statistics, Japan, in terms of amount, is the biggest investor. But in terms of the volume, yung dami ng mga investors, China is number 1. Kaya nung panahon ni Duterte, pumuputok ang Binondo at ang mga probinsyano na pupunta sa Divisoria para kumuha ng kalakal at dalhin sa kanilang mga munisipyo. Para lahat may negosyo, maraming may trabaho. Dumaan ang COVID, nagahul ba tayo? Hindi. Dumating si Marcos, nagahul tayo. Pati bigas na wala. And I can go on and on. Tulay, regalo, 3. Tren, loan. Yun, hanggang doon sa Mindanao. Gusto pang kansilin ni Marcos. So, as the President wants to bring us to the brink of war, tayong mga Pilipino, tayong mga mamamayan, should now be more conscious of what we really want from this government and demand the leadership that we deserve, because we do deserve to live comfortably as Duterte promised and not die for the Marcos family just because Martin Araneta is in business with most of what we should have for food. Yan mga kumasa. Mamili tayo. Kasama ba tayo sa gera kay Marcos? At kung hindi, ano ang ating gagawin? Bahala na kayo maghusga. Salamat.
Thank you, Kado, for enlightening us on the situation and the developments in the Ayungin show and President Marcos's
Check it out na. Si Danilo.
President Marcos's seemingly foreign policy which is going nowhere in sight.
Danilo, transfer ka na dito.
I was assigned today by Mr. Ka.Mentong to discuss briefly the recent comments of former Associate Justice Antonio Carpio, his comments regarding our resupply missions to Ayungin Shoal, specifically his comments at the Diamond Hotel Manila, where the British Embassy organized a forum with BBC News with Professor Richard Hidwaan, Garbio, and the Akbayan chair. They held a forum on various issues. But what I'd like to highlight here is seemingly the new position of Justice Garbio on our resupply issues on the show. He said, and this was reported by GMA News, the headline is that Philippines cannot complain to UNCLOS, the United Nations Laws of the Seas, about China's behavior at the Ayungin show when they conduct law enforcement operations such as non-lethal water cannons or blockades. I'd like to revisit my article that I wrote 3 months ago, where Justice Garcia first made his new position on our resupply missions to Ayungin show clear. In an interview with Karen Davila on ANC News last December, Justice Carpio was asked by Karen Davila about the 10 water cannoning attacks by China against the Philippines in Ayungin show. Carpio says, and I quote, "Resupplying BRP Sierra Madre is a military activity outside of UNCLOS, and UNCLOS has no jurisdiction. The 2016 tribunal, the arbitral award, declared that resupplying a naval ship, BRP Sierra Madre, gray ship, is a military activity. 2016 arbitral award concluded that the dispute between China and the Philippines concerning the BRP Sierra Madre at Ayungin show involves, quote, military activities, and that the tribunal had no authority to assess the situation because it was outside of UNCLOS jurisdiction. For those who want to read the relevant paragraphs of the 2016 arbitration concerning the Philippines, the dispute between the Marine Detachment on Ayungin show, the dispute between China and the Philippines and the standoff, concerning the standoff, please consult the arbitration award, paragraph 1203 and paragraph 1161 to 1162. 1161 of the arbitration, paragraph 1161 of the arbitration states, quote, "In the tribunal's view, this represents, the situation in Ayungin show represents a quintessentially military situation." Why is this relevant? Because the Department of Foreign Affairs, they're saying that the two pillars, their legal basis for the resupply missions at the Ayungin show, the resupply missions at the Ayungin show, is that their two pillars is the UNCLOS and the 2016 arbitration. However, those two documents that they brought up do not support their claim. We have to go back, you can see it right here. We have to go back to history. We have to revisit history to understand the complete picture. The presence of the BRP Sierra Madre when we grounded that military ship in 1999 as a response to the Chinese building stilts, civilian structures in the nearby Mischief Reef in 1994. What we did was not proportional grounding the military vessel there, because we escalated the tensions first. Since our claim to Ayungin show after we ratified UNCLOS is based exclusive economic zone and not anymore territory. The rights of the coastal state, in this case us, the Philippines, in an exclusive economic zone, our rights to explore for resources, extract hydrocarbons and fishing rights underneath the water. The surface waters remain international waters. We do not own that. When President Marcos Jr. says that Ayungin Shoal is within our exclusive economic zone, and therefore, according to his logic, we have the legal right to operate there. That is a glaring sin of omission. The country cannot do anything at once in Ayungin Shoal simply because it is in our exclusive economic zone. On top of that, the state of the BRP Sierra Madre is now dilapidated. It's rusting. And if that vessel succumbs to the elements, as Raymond Powell says, sooner rather than later, we will be violating UNCLOS Article 121 on environmental degradation. If that thing sinks into the seas, it will, since it's now nagigalawan na, it's rusting, we will be guilty of polluting the seas. That does that was Article 125 of UNCLOS states. Governments must take measures to prevent, reduce, and control pollution of the marine environment. We will be accused of violating that part of UNCLOS when the Sierra Madre succumbs to the elements and all the rust and the degradation that come with it. Back in October, President Marcos says he ordered, according to National Security Advisor spokesman Jonathan Malaya, the President Marcos wants to quote, civilianize the situation at Ayungin Shoal. That's a faux pas. That is a contradiction in terms, because the presence of the Sierra Madre itself has turned the Ayungin Shoal into a militarized area, and UNCLOS cannot kick in, cannot apply when an area is militarized. It only kicks in when it is in a peaceful situation. How can the President be consistent in his order to civilianize Ayungin when your operations, the resupply mission, are military in nature? However, we have had reached a consensus mutual agreement protocol with China. There are 8 marines stationed in the Sierra Madre, and for 24 years, fortunately, we've been able to resupply them with food, water, and medicine. If the narrative coming from the mainstream media and the government is true, that China is blocking or harassing our outpost there, then China, if it wanted to, it could starve our marines there or tow away the ship very easily. But they are very patient with us. However, they're losing their patience. Because we just conducted the 8th bilateral consultative mechanism last January, where the 2 countries, the Philippines and China, came together, had a frank dialogue about their positions, and sought a peaceful resolution on the matter. Which is why in February, according to the armed forces of the Philippines, our resupply mission to Ayungin Shoal was, in their own words, flawless. No harassment, no blocking, no water cannons, no shadowing, because we kept the protocol. There is an agreement, this was reported back in 2013, as shown earlier, that the resupply missions to Ayungin Shoal are merely for food, water, medicine, humanitarian materials. When the mainstream media reports in their headlines, China blocks Philippine resupply missions, they do not make the distinction. Resupply of what? Anong binibitbit nyo dyan? food, water, medicine, or construction materials, yung mga bakal, yung mga welding, etc. They're not making the distinction. What was the recommendation of Justice Carpio since he told the President that UNCLOS cannot be in our favor in the unit show? What we should have done was put up a civilian structure there. Because if you look at the other islands that we occupy, dun sa Likas, Awag, and the other islands we occupy, lighthouses, we only have lighthouses in the area. Because those are civilian structures. The Sierra Madre is the only structure that we put up in the EEZ, which is a military structure. The Americans planned to turn that Sierra Madre into an outpost, which is why, according to the Western Command, Philippine Western Command, Vice Admiral Carlos, he reported yesterday, and this was not covered in the media as much, that actually the damaged vessel in the recent resupply mission, that was water cannon, was actually empty. That boat was on a test mission. The resupply mission, the actual resupply mission, was successful, according to Admiral Carlos. But the boat that was damaged was empty. It was on a test mission. Going back to what Voltaire Secretary Gaskin said in 2013 in this conversation with the then Chinese ambassador Mark Netzi, he told us that the Chinese were in fear. They were afraid that we might build another structure there. So what was that boat doing there? It was not a resupply. The headlines before yesterday stated that the boat that was water cannon was a resupply vessel. That is false. The Western Command, Vice Admiral Carlos already came out yesterday and said that was not a resupply vessel at all. That was a test vessel. What were they doing with that vessel? Was it part of their plan to ground another vessel there, and that would serve as the forward operating base, another symbol of another outpost? These are questions that our officials must answer. Going back to the quote from Carter, please, Josh. So, for us, we have consistently stood our ground. Our position has not changed. That the UNCLOS cannot apply at the unit show. In a recent Diamond Manila Hotel Forum, former Associate Justice Carter revised this position and affirmed us saying, resupply missions to Sierra Madre constitutes military activity and thus outside the scope of UNCLOS and compulsory arbitration. We should now shift the activity to civilian activity so we can go back to the arbitral tribunal. The only way that we can shift the activity in Ayungin Show so that we have backup from UNCLOS is to really tow away the Sierra Madre. That is the only way. Because forgetting all the legalities of it, President Marcos likes, when he was in the UN General Assembly, gave a speech there, or when he's in Australia, he likes to champion his role in fighting climate change. You cannot fight climate change when you keep maintaining that outpost, which is a rusting, dilapidated outpost, the Sierra Madre that you will show. You will be violating UNCLOS when it succumbs to the elements and pollutes the seas. That's not fighting climate change, Mr. President. During the Aquino III government, former Foreign Affairs Secretary Albert Del Rosario did not deny the existence of an agreement to remove the Sierra Madre. He told Foreign Affairs Secretary, Chinese, his counterpart, Wang Yi, we don't have money to move it. The Chinese then offered to remove the share matter themselves, which left the Philippine side speechless. That outpost has become an environmental hazard. And I think Justice Carpio probably sees that as well. So who's really violating international law? The U.S. Embassy was quick to issue a statement saying that China's dangerous maneuvers, their actions in Ayungin Shoal violate international law. But the resupply missions themselves are outside of the jurisdiction of UNCLOS, which forms part of international law. It's not the entirety. BBM and the rest of the government and the media are claiming its resupply missions are done in accordance with UNCLOS and the 2016 arbitration. But that's not the case. Should we risk a war or a conflict over a rusting ship, environmental hazard, on a shoal underwater during night time? If you don't want to tow the ship, that's fine. But the solution is simple. The government says that they are running out of ships for their resupply missions. The solution is simple. Keep the protocol like what we did in February after the bilateral consultative mechanism. Maintain the status quo of only sending humanitarian goods as agreed upon with China, so there will be no more water cannoning incidents. Nobody likes to see that happen anyway. But why is it that Justice Carpio can make this correct observation, but when I or any of our colleagues do the same, we are accused of being pro-China or we're branded a traitor? So if he's spreading misinformation, why doesn't the media or the government condemn him? Because he has now shifted to our position, for which we have been called traitor for presenting. But when he does it, there is no apology, there is no reparation, there is no contrition. We have suffered being branded unfairly, traitor to our country, etc., for saying the same things that he said. His rhetoric was, Justice Carpio's rhetoric was stronger last year. During the first water cannoning incident at the Ngayon Show on August 2023, President Marcos responded and he said that the situation was a gray area. We have to return that. Before the paradigm shift, before all of that, we have the gray area. What we collectively as a nation have to understand is this. We must recognize the reality of a territorial dispute between China and the Philippines. You will not be treated with a red carpet in the area. So when the president made the statement that the Ayungin Shoal is a gray area, Rappler, Vera Files, him, attacked the president for the statement. Carpio wrote an article for Rappler where he said, Marcos is wrong about gray area in Ayungin Shoal. And he defended the resupply missions before. 7 months later, 6 months later, he has now changed his position. We said at the time, no, the president is right, this is a gray area, you're wrong. Now he has come to the conclusion that what we are doing there is actually outside the authority of UNCLOS. Though we welcome the truth wherever it may come from, I think there has to be some apology for us, since we have our allegiance to our country was questioned for saying the exact same thing that he did. This double standard is intolerable, and it must end now. So I hope the president and the government and the media covers this more and listens. to the new position of the former justice, so that we can finally end this endless cat and mouse game at the Union Show. Thank you very much.